Imagine a software project that's running into trouble. The team has met a critical bug situation that has brought the whole system crashing down. Now the development team is in a frenzy, there is panic, everyone's wondering what is the source of this problem, and as they go into the code base they are met with utter mayhem. There is inconsistency in the formatting, the variable names are so cryptic and the functions are overly complex. Nobody knows where to start from. Now, the lack of clean code practices has made debugging a nightmare. And at the end of this process, they've lost valuable time, valuable resources, stakeholders are frustrated, and then there's the issue of a lack of faith because now their reputation is on the line. This will never be you. This can never be you, because after today's video you will learn how to write clean code that will help you stay on top of your coding game and ensure that you save your team valuable time and money. Hi, my name is Olivia. Welcome to my channel. So, some of the principles that you can employ to write clean code are maintainability, principles like readability, simplicity, and I'll go ahead and explain. Let's talk about readability, for instance. When you're writing code, you want to use naming conventions that are memorable, easy to remember, right? Meaningful as well. Let's say, for instance, you're writing a function that checks the number of guests in a conference. Number of guests. Simple, easy, straightforward. Number of guests. That's the name of your function, right? Moving it on, it should be simple. Keep it simple and straightforward. This is not the time to show all the cool tricks that you've learned over the years coding, because while some of the things that you do in your code may make sense to you, they might not make sense to the next person who's going to build upon what you have done on stage one. Then there is the issue of modularity. Make sure that each of your modules, each of your functions has a single thing that they achieve. Don't try to cram everything all into once, because that can lead to problems later on. Consistency. If you choose a formatting style, stick to it. If you choose a naming style, stick to it. Your coding conventions should be consistent. It should be such that, you know, someone's reviewing your code or building on what you've built on, they should be able to say this is the style that this person is using for their names. If you're using underscores, keep at it. You know, if you're using a particular naming convention, just keep at it. Then clarity, make sure that your code is easy to understand. And when I talk about clarity, I want to mention something about using comments. I think that comments are one of those things that you can't say they are good, you can't say they are bad. It all depends on how you use it. Now, when you're using comments, try as much as possible not to use comments to explain the code. Let the code be clear enough that it explains itself. And then there is testability. Write code that's easy to test. You want to write code and go ahead and run unit tests on them, just to be sure that each component works as you intended and as is expected, so that at the end of the day, when you're doing integration testing and all those other testing, you don't run into issues, okay? And then finally, there is the issue of sustainability. You want it to be that your code can be built upon. You want your code to be extendable. You want it to be that if more needs to be done in future, your code gives room for that to be done. There are some rules that you can keep in mind to help you to continue to practice clean coding. Some of them are the use of meaningful names, like I explained earlier. Try not to use abbreviations, try not to use cryptic names. Use names that infer what a function or a module or a class is meant to do. And also single responsibility principle. Remember that each class should have one job, one job and one job only, one reason to change. Each class should have one reason and one reason only to change. And then of course use small functions. Let your functions be bite-sized, so one function does one thing. That way you're able to keep it consistent, keep your code manageable. And of course avoid duplication. Use comments where necessary. Instead of repeating yourself, instead of duplicating your what you're saying in your code, you can try using functions, use classes, use modules, to bring things that are alike together. That way you don't keep repeating yourself. Use comments where necessary. Your comment shouldn't be explaining what your code does. Your code should explain itself. Use comments when you want to do things like explain why the code is there in the first place, right? For instance, if you want to say that this is the function that counts the number of guests that are seated, and you want to use that to differentiate when guests have left, you're creating a function that follows when guests have left. So comments should be a bit descriptive of why this code has to come and not what this code does. Okay, and we also should always think about formatting, consistency in formatting. I can never overemphasize this. If you're using spaces, indentations, things like that, keep at it. Be regular. Don't do 2-line spaces and then later do 3-line spaces and all that. It can be a bit confusing, but for yourself and for other people who would work on your code with you. Now, I hope that you've enjoyed this episode today. Writing clean code isn't just a matter of personal preference. It shouldn't be a thing of, oh, I like to do it this way, or I like to do it that way. Of course, there's room to wiggle around, there's room to be authentic and original even as you code, but these are professional standards. These are professional principles that guide you and ensure that your code is easy to maintain, easy to scale, and that whoever you work with will have a good time working together with you, reviewing your code when the time comes, and of course building on what you've built. So here's wishing you beautiful, robust, scalable projects in your future, nothing like what we discussed earlier in this video, and I will see you in the next video. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and follow me. Let's do more. Cheers.